It's causing distress.
Pharmaceutical prices. That was one of your four issues with Medicare. Related to that really quick, because we've written a lot about this on the blog. I've always been surprised when I come here to France and I basically buy my asthma medicine and bring it back to the States. Because no matter what the medicine is, it's always a third to a fifth cheaper here than it is back home. You know, $25 or $30 versus $150 back home. I assume it's because the government negotiates prices with these companies.
That's right.
Talk about that, please. Well, but I know that's been one of your proposals back home with regards to Medicare, I believe.
What I've argued, there's been a lot of discussion in the United States about how to get the deficit down. And I try to remind people that just 10 years ago we had a very large surplus, 2% of GDP. Mm-hmm. So big that Greenspan said that if we didn't do something about the surplus, we would entirely pay down the national debt, and it would be difficult for him to conduct monetary policy.
Well, that's interesting.
An important reminder of why we should be skeptical of the Federal Reserve, that it is a political institution, not just an economic institution. It has a political agenda, or has had in the past. Right. If we think about how we went from that very large surplus to the situation today, we get a very good idea of what we might do to correct the fiscal position of the United States. And that there were just four things that brought us from where we were then, huge surpluses, to where we are now. And those things were, first, the tax cut for the rich that we couldn't afford. Secondly, two very expensive wars. A book with Linda Bilms that I wrote, the $3 trillion war, the true cost of the Iran conflict, put that cost
And what is the cost? Not to get too much of a tangent, but we talked about this before. What is the overall cost of the war expected to be? Because you talked before about the medical expenses and everything else.
Yeah.
Is there an estimate?
The budgetary costs so far have been around $2 trillion, but we were, in our book, underestimated the future cost. Almost 1 out of 2 people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan are disabled.
Okay. And
we've estimated that the cost of paying for health care and disability for these may be approaching $1 trillion. So this is not even reflected in the official accounts. Right. These are our estimates, corroborated by others, of what these future costs are likely to be, given both the high incidence and the high cost. Many of those coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan have multiple injuries, so they're going to be very, very costly. So that's the second major cost, major reason for the increase in the deficit. The third is a very good thing that we did, which was to provide prescription benefit under Medicare for the aged, but we made, again, a mistake. The Bush made a mistake, and that was to say that even though the government is the largest buyer of prescription drugs, it could not negotiate with the drug companies, and that leads to those high costs that you were referring to. Estimated by some people over a period of 10 years, about $1 trillion extra given to the drug companies. Okay. So that's another major source of our deficit.
Right. Is there any valid reason for why we wouldn't negotiate the drug prices down?
No valid reason. Okay.
And it's simply big business.
This was the banks and weren't able to make good investments with their capital. They misallocated money in the housing sector and other sectors, but the banks were very good at making political investments, and the same thing was true about the drug industry. They've been very hard-pressed to come up with new drugs, but the money that they're spending in Washington is yielding high dividends, and this is an example of those high dividends. The final cause of the change of our framework from the surplus that we had 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, to where we are today, is the economic downturn. And that's why the most important thing, actually, for dealing with the deficit is putting America back to work. And that's where a stimulus package is absolutely essential. Proposals for more austerity cutbacks are going to make that even worse, and prospects over a real significant reduction in the deficit, not very good.